says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit in me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your spirit from me, but restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with a willing spirit. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with a willing spirit. This morning I want to talk to you about being transformed from the inside out. Transformed from the inside out. Perhaps there are some parents who can relate, but have you ever taken the time to really clean your car? I mean, a deep clean, vacuum the seats and wipe the dashboard, get the crumbs out the cracks, and you finally sit back and say, now this is a clean car. And as soon as your kids get in, you lay down the law. Nobody else can eat in this car anymore. But then one day you're driving past McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, and from the back seat you hear, can we get McDonald's, or I'm hungry. And you hesitate because you remember what this car went through. You remember what the car looked like. But you say, all right, I'll get it, but don't make a mess. Don't make a mess. And so they get the food, and before you even get down the road, you see a fry slip between the seat and the console. You see them reach for the ketchup packet and the Polynesian sauce, and you're like, okay, this car will never be clean again. It's about to get sticky, and you realize in this moment that the car is not about to stay as clean as you made it. And if we're honest, that's just like us. God cleans us up. He restores us. He puts our lives back together, and we say, God, I won't mess it up again. I won't mess up this time. And God gives us our privileges back, and it doesn't take long before something slips between the cracks, and something spills, and something gets messy all over again. But the truth is, God already knows that we aren't going to stay as clean as He made us. That He knows that we are liable to make another mess. And He still chooses to clean us up. He still restores us again. And He gives us another chance. He brings us back, because the Christian life is not about one-time perfection, but it's about continuous transformation. It's a cycle of God forgiving us, reshaping us, and giving us another chance. And that's exactly where we find David in the text in Psalm 51. David has created a mess. David is a mess, y'all. I'm not talking about French fries. David messed up bad. He saw another man's wife, decided he wanted her, brought her over, and long before she's pregnant. And now instead of owning it, David starts trying to cover it up. He calls her husband home from war, like, hey man, take a few days off, go home, relax, but the plan doesn't work. So David takes it a step forward. He has the man put on the front lines of war to make sure he doesn't make it back. David's a mess, y'all. And just when David thinks he got away with it, the prophet Nathan confronts David with a parable that exposes his wrongdoing, leading David to admit his guilt. And this mess is what drives David to pray fervently. In fact, this prayer is called a penitential psalm, or a song of confession. And if we're honest, we can talk about David this morning, but if we're honest, we've all prayed some penitential prayers. All of us, the kind of prayers where you don't need a long introduction. You don't need any fancy words. You don't even need good grammar, because when you know you've messed up, you get straight to the point. Help me, God. These are the prayers where you can't blame anybody else. You can't point the finger, and you don't make excuses. You say, God, I need you. God, please help me. God, I need you to fix this mess. God, cleanse me. And so that's where David is. He's not the king right now. He's not David the warrior right now. He's just a man who knows that he's wrong. And instead of hiding, instead of pretending, instead of covering it up, he brings the whole mess to God. And that's why he doesn't pray, God, help me look better. He prays, God, create in me a clean heart. Because sometimes our mess is so bad that we don't need to pray a prayer asking God to manage our image. That we need to pray a prayer asking God to transform our heart. And here it is, David's prayer was a desperate prayer for inner transformation. Because God does more than forgive our failures. But he transforms us from the inside out. He wants to clean us up. He creates a new heart within us, sustains us with his presence, and restores the joy that we've lost along the way. And so David is aware of the division his rebellion has created between himself and God. And he is desperate to see this relationship restored. And this matters because David's failure was serious and public. But what's powerful is this, that his response is internal. And that challenges us because most of us, when we mess up, our first instinct is to deal with the outside. We think, God, how do I fix how this looks? How do I clean this up quickly? How do I move past this without people knowing? But David shows us that real repentance is not about managing our appearances, but it's about addressing the heart. You can recover your reputation and still have a messed up heart. So transformation looks like this, not just saying that I'm sorry, but asking God what needs to change in me. And so David shows us a process of being changed. David says, create in me a clean heart, O God. David asked God to create in him a new heart. In his repentance, he's not asking God to adjust him. He's asking God to make him over. David doesn't ask for a quick pardon. David doesn't ask for a cover-up. David doesn't ask God to smooth it over and move on. He asks that his heart be made new. And the word create points us back to creation language. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God is the creator of all things. He can make something out of nothing. When God creates, he doesn't patch, but he produces, he forms, he brings something out of nothing. And Genesis 2:7 says that God formed man from the dust of the ground, which means that God carefully shapes what he creates. Jeremiah 18:1-6 says that I am the potter and you are the clay. God had a design in mind for all of his creation. But when we mess up, we have to be willing to get back on the potter's wheel. And too often when we mess up, we rush to move forward. And the first thing we want to do is move on quickly. We want to feel forgiven instantly. We want a quick cleanup. We want God to move us past things. But David shows us a different way to pray when he says, create in me a clean heart. He's really saying, God, don't just speak to me, but work on me. God, put your hands back on me. That I need more than a word. I need your touch. God, get involved in my life again. And don't leave me the same way, but make me over from the inside out. Reshape my heart. God, rework my mind, remake my life. I don't want to be self-made, but I want to be God-shaped. I want to be a reflection of your workmanship. I want to be formed and held together by your hands. In the potter's hands is where we get pressed. It's where we get stretched. It's where we get reshaped, and sometimes we get broken down to be built back again. But the potter can take our sin-stained hearts and make it clean again. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit in me. Renew means to restore, to refresh, and to redirect. God, don't just give me a new heart, but give me a spirit that I can stay right. God, change what's in me and then keep me so that I can live it out. Somewhere along the line, we grow up And we think that we can live without the consistent presence of God. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit in me. And David says, cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. David isn't just worried about progressing and moving past his mistakes, but he's concerned about having the consistent divine presence of God in his life. We need the consistent divine presence of God. One of the things that I miss about having small children is that they want to be around their parents. You know how small children are. As long as the parent is near, they're okay. A child may not understand everything. They may not know where they're going. They may not have control over anything, but the child's confidence is not in their environment, but it's in their parent's presence. When the parent is close, the child feels safe. When the parent steps away, the child feels fearful. When the parent returns, the child feels secure again. And that's how the presence of God works in our lives. It's not that life stops being difficult. It's that his presence changes how we experience life. But as children grow, we all know eventually we start thinking that we don't need our parents as much. And spiritually, we can do the same thing. We get comfortable functioning without being conscious of God's consistent presence in our lives. If you're like me, there are some days I wish I could go back to being a child. Yeah, I wish I could go back to doing just a few chores. I wish I could go back to no bills. Amen. And no responsibility and plenty of time to waste. I wish I could go back because I missed the security of being a child. I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to fret because I knew that as long as my parents were with me, everything would be all right. And that's how we need to feel about the presence of God, that as long as God is with me, I'll be all right. That as long as I'm in his presence, I'll feel secure. As long as I'm in his presence, I can face whatever comes my way. David says, cast me not away from your presence. God, don't leave me to myself. God, don't let me grow so grown that I think that I can live without your presence. God, don't let me get so busy that I lose your presence. Don't let me get so strong that I forget that I need your presence to sustain me. Don't let me get so comfortable that I stop seeking your presence, but I find safety in your presence. David longed to be back in the presence of God because that's the joy of our salvation, knowing that we are safe in him. And so David says, restore to me the joy of your salvation. David desires his joy back. What David is saying is that I want to experience again the joy that comes from your consistent and divine presence. Not surface level joy, not joy based on how you feel, but deep inner gladness that comes from being right with God. You know, in life, we often tell people to just be happy. But this joy is not self-manufactured. This joy is connected to the heart. This joy is a heart condition tied to a relationship with God. The consistent divine presence of God that produces spiritual joy. The kind of joy that allows you to be content in a difficult season. That's the joy of the Lord sustaining you with his presence. I'm talking about the kind of joy that shows up in hard seasons when nothing has changed on the outside, but something is holding you together on the inside. That's the joy of the Lord sustaining you with his presence. This isn't the kind of joy that comes from good news. This is the kind of joy that remains when the news isn't so good. That's the joy of the Lord sustaining you with his presence. This joy is the consequence of God's presence in our lives. And so here is what we've got to acknowledge today. The fact that David says restore means that joy can be lost. salvation, but joy can be lost. And I know we like to say, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. But some of us are saved, but we're not joyful anymore. Some of us are saved, but we don't have joy. There are so many things in this life that are designed to steal our joy. Every time you turn around, every time you look on your phone or watch the TV, it's another tragedy, it's another crisis, it's another reason to worry, internal guilt and regret. Even after God has forgiven you, your mind replays what you said, what you did, what you lost. There are so many things in this world competing for our attention, and many of them are quietly draining our joy. You start surviving instead of enjoying the presence of God, and before you know it, your joy is gone. But the fact that joy can be restored suggests to us that God designed it so that it could be recovered. That's good news. That's good news that since joy can be restored, God designed it so that it could be recovered. In fact, what makes this text even more powerful is the fact that this same David in Psalm 51 is the same David in Psalm 16 who said that in his presence is the fullness of joy. David wasn't guessing where joy comes from. He had already experienced the joy of the Lord. David had already experienced joy in the presence of God. And so David says, restore to me the joy of your salvation, because although joy can be lost, it can also be restored. Our joy may be lost, but it can be found again in the presence of God. In other words, lost joy can be found in God's presence. And when God brings you back to Him, He'll bring your joy back. That He'll bring your joy back. He'll bring your peace back. In the presence of God, He'll bring your strength back. That He'll bring your mind back. That's what the prophet Joel meant when he says, I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten. That He won't bring you back, He won't bring it back empty, but He'll bring you back to complete restoration, and He'll give back everything that was taken from you. And I'm so glad that God is a complete restorer of joy, because that means that no matter how badly I messed up, that He restores based on His divine presence in my life. That no matter how bad I messed up, that He can restore the joy. That no matter how far I've fallen, He restores based on His mercy and not my merits. That no matter how broken I feel, He restores based on His power and not my condition. That He restores based on His ability and not mine. And that's good news today, because I don't know about you, but there's some areas in my life where I want my joy back. But I know I can't do it on my own. There are some areas of my life where I need my joy back, but I know I can't do it on my own. And so we've got to be like David. He said, God, restore to me the joy of my salvation. There are some places in my spirit where I want my peace back. There are some seasons I've walked through where I want my strength back. There are moments I survive where I need my praise back. Come on, do I have a witness who can say, I've had some battles that I've had to fight, and I want my confidence back. I've had some disappointments that I've had to carry, and I need my hope back. I need my peace back. There are some dry places in my life, and I want my fire that God falls afresh on me. And that's good news, that God can create a clean heart. And that He can renew a right spirit in me. And that He'll restore the joy. Come on, does somebody need to be restored this morning? He'll restore. He'll recover. And He'll bring it back. He'll give it back to you. Everything that you lost. Because in His presence, you got to be in His presence, is where restoration happens. And so David reminds us that real change is not just about our behavior modification, that it's about a heart transformation sustained by the presence of God. And when we're in his presence, we find joy. That's where we find our joy. We don't find our joy in the world. We can't create our own joy, but joy, true joy, is found in the presence of God. And so we've got to ask ourselves, am I living in a way that depends daily on his presence? That depends daily on his presence? Or am I only turning back to him when something breaks in my life? Am I only desiring to be in his presence when I've made a mess of things? But we've got to be in the presence, the consistent divine presence of God. And that's where we find our joy. That's where we find our praise. That's where you can lift your hands, even though things in your life may be falling apart. That's when you can pray to God on those family members that you've been praying and worrying about and say, I believe you, God. I trust you, God. Because it's his presence that keeps us. It's his presence that covers us. It's his presence that gives us peace that no one else can give us. That nothing else can give us. And so as you stand on your feet, we've got to remember to stay in the presence of God. If you truly want to be transformed, if you want to be made over again. And what I love about this text is that it lets us know that transformation is not a one-time thing. That we are not saved and then all of a sudden we're supposed to have it all together, but we consistently make a mess. Even David, who was a king, David was after God's own heart. And he still made a mess. And so we've got to consistently desire to be made over again, to be changed, to be renewed, to be restored. And so you ought to ask God, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me, and cast me not away from your presence. I don't want to be without your presence, but restore to me the joy of your salvation. He'll do what? He'll withhold you. It says he'll withhold you with his hands. So this morning, as we open the doors of the church, we open and extend the invitation for someone